While working on a future Pokemon fact video that I should have uploading in the coming weeks, I started thinking about how almost every Pokemon game, you begin your journey by leaving at a young age to explore the world, saying goodbye to your mother before taking on tasks that would seem impossible for someone that age in the real world. And thinking about that goodbye with your mother made me think about another game. Mother, actually. I bet that a really high percentage of people that have gotten a taste of the Mother series through NES and Smash Bros. and Lucas probably haven't played a Mother game before. It's kind of a complicated scenario. Over in the States, we got Earthbound in 1995 for the Super Nintendo, featuring NES. But in Japan, that was Mother 2. The original Mother dropped on the NES in Japan all the way back in 1989, featuring Nintendo. And yeah, he looks almost identical to NES. A localized version of this game was apparently created as far back as 1990, but it was never released in the States. That's a long story for another day. Then, almost a decade later, Japan saw Mother 3 hit the Game Boy Advance. Here's where Lucas comes in, but once again, this game never saw an official English translation either. Outside of Japan, Earthbound never really took off, and it still remains as a cult classic. But an interesting thing that I noticed is that it actually shares a lot of similarities with a Japanese RPG that did take off in a major way: Pokémon. For fun, today we're going to take a look at some of the many ways that the Mother games parallel and maybe even inspired one of the largest RPG franchises of all time. For one, it isn't especially surprising that there's some Mother influence within Pokémon. They actually share a small handful of the same creators. A small company by the name of Ape Incorporated began as a developer on the first two Mother titles. In 1995, after the creation of Mother 2, Ape became a new company that might sound a little more familiar to you: Creatures Incorporated. Creatures currently owns a third of Pokémon, alongside Game Freak and Nintendo. However, while they do have involvement in spin-off Pokémon games and the trading card game, they don't actually have a humongous hand in the main series of Pokémon titles. But there are still staff that have worked on both Mother and Pokémon games. So while there isn't a huge amount of crossover in terms of staff that have worked on both games, it's not out of the question that employees working on both of the RPGs could have shared some concepts or ideas with one another. One potential reference to Mother came as early as pre-alpha stages of Pokémon, back when it was still just the concept of capsule monsters. One very early beta monster resembling a monkey with a hat can be found in an early capsule monster art. The hat has been noted by many fans as resembling the one that Nintendo wears in the original Mother. It isn't totally out of the question that this mock-up creature could be some kind of reference to Mother, and maybe its parent company, Ape. Speaking of Nintendo, there's actually a hidden default player and rival name that can be accessed by changing the original Pokémon game's code with a cheating device. Hidden within the English versions of the game is the default player name of Nintendo and the rival name of Sony. Probably just a fun jab from Nintendo employees and not a Mother reference though. If you run that same change of code on the Japanese versions of the game, you'll get the player names Game Freak and Creatures. But beyond staff and company similarities, let's look at the games themselves. Both Mother and Pokémon feature a red-capped child protagonist that can harness great elemental powers. Both games have you leaving home and your mother early on to go off on an adventure, and both early Mother games and early Pokémon games have a father that is largely absent throughout your journey, with your father not existing at all in early Pokémon and only appearing over the phone in Mother. You can also always return to your mother at home to heal up. One big thing that both Mother and Pokémon did during their time was present an RPG based on aesthetics largely from modern times. In the late 80s and early 90s, most RPGs followed two paths: epic battles of the future or epic battles of fantasy, sometimes both. But epic battles of town that looks a lot like a pretty normal town on the surface was pretty uncommon. Both games are also unique for their time for not relying on an overworld map screen, instead having a seamless transition between towns and battles as you walk. Both games also use a unique theme for their towns, with Pokémon using colors while Earthbound uses numbers. Both also use the theme of collecting 8 objects before taking on the game's final objective: gym badges in Pokémon and melodies in Mother 1 and 2. Mother and Pokémon also feature an irritating rival child next door that gets in your way throughout your journey: Blue in Pokémon and Pokey in Earthbound. Both also do that terrible thing with poison, where not only does it hurt you in battle, but your screen keeps flashing outside of battle, damaging your party while you walk around. Many fans have noted similarities between the Mother 3 love theme and End's farewell. While I do find that these comparisons aren't quite as similar as many have been led to believe, they do share a very close theme of 5 notes. Both feature a key item, the bicycle, which has its own unique theme and helps the protagonist move faster. Another fun item that Pokémon fans love to comment on is the bag of Dragonite that you can find. This incredibly rare item allows you to pull off a massive attack by transforming a party member into a dragon. But there's no real Pokémon reference here. It's simply called Dragon Powder in the Japanese Mother 2, and this big orange guy isn't called anything close to Dragon Powder in Japanese. And speaking of creatures, there are tons of postulated connections between different creatures here or there from both series. While many of these are likely coincidental, the most popular is the connection between the final boss of both games, Mewtwo and Gygus. Both wield tremendous psychic power, were betrayed by humans, and have fairly similar sprite art when compared with its appearance in Mother 1 as Gygue? Okay, just look at those letters. So what does it all mean? I've seen some pretty far-out conspiracy theories trying to connect Mother and Pokémon, but overall I think it's just intriguing to see how both Mother and Pokémon began to fill an RPG mold that didn't really exist during its time. Nintendo's future first-party RPGs seem to follow suit with these games, giving us titles that focus on color and the familiar while still being full of interesting stories and complex strategy. Are they different? Oh, you bet they're different! Pokémon had a humongous focus on multiplayer play, collection, and friendly competition, which helped to grow as a communication piece between friends. The Mother series, on the other hand, is extremely surreal and introspective. It tackles rough topics like family problems, fitting in, and even cults, but all in a way that still feels fun and whimsical. Earthbound is the only game available worldwide on the Nintendo eShop, but I'm still hoping that someday we'll see an official re-release that includes the full Mother trilogy in all languages. But beyond that, there's still an amazing Mother 3 fan translation out there, alongside a completely free fan-made spiritual successor in Mother 4 that's supposed to drop sometime this summer. Most people watching this video have probably played this game, but not this game. But if you're a Pokémon fan looking for a new adventure that still feels familiar, you can always leave Mom once again to head off on a new journey to save the world. Thanks for watching today's video. If you want to check out the last couple of fact videos that we've done, you can find those right up here. Also, if you want to follow this channel and see future content, you can click this button down here to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and see you guys next time with more Nintendo content.